That's neat. Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion is a thrill ride of fast-paced, flashy animations and tender and heartwarming moments. We experience the story of Zack Fair as he meets all our favorite Final Fantasy VII characters and learns what it truly means to be a hero worthy of Soldier First Class. The biggest standout I noticed with the gameplay, and it's a mixed bag of emotions, is when I'm playing on normal mode, the game becomes almost too easy. This ease factor is then increased when you're promoted to Soldier First Class. Depending on how well you do in battle, you receive a percentage of your MP, AP, and HP back.
Conflict resolved. Conflict resolved. Conflict resolved. Conflict resolved.
The ease factor turns its head again with the economy in this game. You can quickly rack up gil, and the economy will crumble apart. I haven't seen much reason to buy anything other than the basic items, as my materia and equipment gifted by the game seem to get the job done. Early in the game, I already had the materia that complements the weaknesses of the monster because most encounters outside of boss fights, you essentially can spam whatever their weakness is and be able to finish the enemy in 1 to 2 strikes of magic. If you're looking out for chests or doing some of the optional side missions, you'll find most of the upgrades that you need to carry you through the story. The items purchased for the most part were sacrificial for materia fusion mechanic that also netted me the upgraded materials that I needed. The only time I struggled with the game was in a handful of situations where the thing that stopped me was being underleveled and unable to overcome a one-hit attack. And trust me, some enemies just straight up hit hard. Now I understand that I could go without spamming magical weaknesses, but I would view this as something that should be balanced in the game already. I'll have to try hard mode to see if these techniques seem to fail, but the game doesn't disappoint in the feeling like a badass department though, which could be the point of the ease factor, is the game wants you to feel like a badass soldier. For me, the fun of exploration and dungeons in Final Fantasy is that it's a survival test, and that you use your economy to prepare using the shops, and then you have to endure the dungeons through action as you have to resource manage your gauges from hitting 0. With a broken economy though, and how quickly you can get to an item in battle, it destroys this idea. I still enjoy the simple game loop of missions that are quick and to the point, but I'd like a little more of a resource challenge. Though the ease factor finally takes a back seat once you reach the final dungeon. It could be that I also felt the need to try and engage more with mechanics other than spamming the 3 typical magic spells, fire, lightning, and blizzard. I was still able to spam magic for the most of the fights, but was needing to use ethers more often. Another plus of the final dungeon fights was that not all enemies had elemental weaknesses. The G-monsters in Lake of Oblivion, while some of them had elemental weaknesses, tended to be some of my favorite fights in the game. Except for the final boss fight. Final boss fight part 1, which spamming Blizzaga was doing 9,999 damage while being able to maintain distance from him and the minions that could be taken care of with ease. Again, spamming magic. As for the final Genesis fight, I just felt it was balanced, exciting, and I like how it reversed from the typical JRPG fashion where you have to fight Genesis the man before he turns into a giant monster in stage 2. It was a neat change of pace. Comment below if you know any other games like this. I'd love to know. So we've talked a lot about the game's ease factor, and this is because the game creates an environment for self-induced challenges. Not exactly a problem, but it would be interesting if at certain points in the game, your magic and even your command materia are taken away, and you have to engage in combat in a more primal situation. A perfect example that I thought was going to happen is the beginning of Chapter 6. Zack is caught in a precarious situation in swim trunks and a beach umbrella in hand, facing down against some armed Genesis clones. I was amped. And then I found out I was still able to spam magic and deal with the combatants swiftly. Diegetically, this makes no sense, as he wouldn't have materia on him. He should be pulling a MacGyver. This should have been a test to see how he's grown from the events of the previous chapter. I want to loop this to the earlier point that how I could just not use the materia and make myself only use a beach umbrella, but it would make way more sense for the game to take these advantages away from me. Now all this said, the ease factor could be a problem of it originally being a 2007 PSP game with a facelift. But it makes a lot of changes in other ways. Cue the Buster Sword Proficiency Battle Stance. This is a mechanic that feels exciting at first, but then just comes up really empty slightly due to the balancing of enemies. In the midpoint of the game, you come into possession of the iconic sword, and you feel a sense of coming into your own as a member of Soldier. I was amped when I first received the sword, as Zack's earlier sword is beyond generic. I really wish there were different weapons in the game. But I understand that this isn't the case because it's building up to the meeting between the Buster Sword and the spiky-haired wielder. The first swing of it, you can feel the weight of the strikes. This could possibly be my imagination just getting to experience the new animations of the Buster Sword though. You also get a battle stance that is new to the game as well as another meter to fill, the Buster Sword proficiency meter, which fills at a snail's pace, like it increases by the hundredth of a percent. I have not gotten it to 1% yet, so I feel like this is added for completionists more than actually a mechanic meant to aid you in the story. With Battle Stance and Crisis Core though, you can have more powerful attacks and it provides excellent guarding to diminish the damage from enemies, as well as the ability to regain MP and AP through destroying enemies. They do not want you to be without these gauges filled. You do also gain new abilities from increasing your Buster Sword proficiency, which is a neat bonus for those going after the objective, but again, it isn't what I would call necessary to playing the game. When you can use magic or command material for almost every combat situation, you rarely need to use the battle stance or attack button. I've tried to use the battle stance more to challenge myself, especially in the Shinra training missions that have you fight hordes of troopers, which can be a fun change of pace, but again, it is infuriating that the meter fills so slowly that instills a sense of futility to doing it. I've seen the battle stance compared to Predator mode from Final Fantasy VII Remake. I can see the similarities, but when you have the ATB meter in Remake that is required for you to use the materia or items, you have to rely on basic combative moves or Predator mode to charge the ATB meter quicker. In defense of Crisis Core though, Remake has the benefit of being a newer game, since technically Crisis Core is a remaster with added and changed elements. But the point still stands that Crisis Core Reunion did make changes to the game that involved more than just the graphics and voice acting being updated. The Digital Mind Wave, aka the DMW, is the quirkiest yet most awesome mechanic presented in this game. How does it work? Do you love slot machines? Do you love it when you don't have to do anything with those slot machines? It just spins till you win? That's the DMW. Sitting in the top left corner of the screen doing its thing till boom, you're in a very helpful prize. This is my favorite ease factor because I do love some random number generation. It's chaotic and that's how I like it. It's also how the game handles limits breaks, summons, and to me the best part, story explaining interludes. I dig how it's incorporated diegetically within the game, how it is what Zack is thinking, and how he's feeling about the characters that roll through his mind while in the heat of battle. This is further complemented by having heightened emotions for certain characters during different chapters of the story. Also, how the DMW will occasionally add an interlude cutscenes in the battle as Zack remembers certain memories. I was elated by these breathers mid-battle. Some might not like the interruptions, but I loved how you had these hidden moments of story that just sometimes appeared, providing more context to the events of the story, or that just have these personal moments that deepen your connection with the characters. And some are just sweet. Example, Zack asking Aerith to promise to wear pink whenever they meet. And if you played Final Fantasy VII, you know where this goes. And if you haven't, I don't know any of this video will make sense to you. Just maybe watch something else. They may not be important during battle, but I thought it was an interesting way to expand the universe without bloating the main narrative. I love how the limit breaks and summons are handled with this as well. This keeps you from spamming the summon move and then replenishing your MP to do it again, like you do with magic. The limit breaks are fun little cutscenes that add a lot of visual flair to the game in typical Final Fantasy fashion. Most of the limits are quick quotes from the DMW portrait, accompanied by a cutscene of Zack performing a limit break that mimics a character's style or straight up includes the character in them. My favorite being Genesis's Apocalypse move, where Zack hears the voice of Genesis in his head and responds back with a quote, "Mind your own business."
Show me the true power of soldier. Mind your own business.
How he is using Genesis' move, but wants to reject him from having any influence over him. But the summons put the limit breaks to shame. Oh my goodness. All of them I have seen are either Apocalypse level thrill rides or are fun cute little attacks or buffs from the Chocobo mode summons. They are glorious pre-rendered cutscenes that are hard to skip, even if you have seen them 100 times. Alright, the last thing I want to mention about the Digital Mind Wave is the concept for leveling in this game is kind of strange. Essentially, you still will gain XP, but is on an invisible counter, and this just increases your odds of the DMW rolling a 777, which is what you need to level up. I would find myself unevenly leveling, and sometimes it would be a story chapter or two before I would level up. Other times, I would level up in back-to-back combat scenarios. This is Crisis Core putting an emphasis not only on completing missions, but as well as extending combat, fighting back against the ease factor. What do I mean about extending combat? Well, since the DMW is based on randomly generated spins, if you finish combat quickly, then it won't have enough rolls for you to get that 777. Though, if you are wanting to go through the story, I finished my normal playthrough at level 35, didn't have much issue. And again, I only did 20% of the side missions at the time of this recording. Missions, of course, help the leveling process as well because it banks up the invisible XP counter. But if you're concerned about leveling, this is when the game can push you into using regular attacks or the Buster Sword battle stance. This usually takes more time to wear down an enemy, so it does encourage a different style of play and allow the DMW to do its thing. This again feels like where the portable nature of the game really hits. I haven't finished many of the missions, maybe about 20%, due to wanting to produce this video in a timely manner. But what I have experienced from the missions, I really love. They're quick and snappy. When you get higher ranked missions, it can start to test your resolve and diminish the ease factor a bit. This has a lot to do with stopping overpowered ability attacks. That if underleveled, you won't be able to get the attack power down enough to a percentage that can protect you from insta-death. You will die if you don't get it below that 75% mark. The missions serve to keep the player engaged and get to have the combat, the meat of the game, going for hours. I found myself going back after I finished the story because I was enjoying the missions, especially the ones that had their own narratives, like little narratives inside of them. Especially the mission where the Shinra trooper tries to overcome the power of Soldier, and of course the inclusion of Yuffie in her treasure hunts. I'll probably find myself loading up Crisis Core long after this review just to have fun with the missions, because there are plenty to play after the credits roll. Oh hey, we're back with another disclaimer. I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I'm going to use some quotes and then complain about their source material. So, I really enjoyed most of the narrative, specifically the scenes that tied directly in with Final Fantasy VII. I'm not gonna lie though, I glazed over pretty much any time Genesis went all fanboy over Loveless, which didn't originally have a deeper meaning to Final Fantasy VII. It was just a shout out to My Bloody Valentine. The pros just lost me every time. Also, Project G lost my interest the second part of the game when it was trying to gel with the scenes tied with the original plot. I despise Genesis being shoehorned into the Nibelheim sequence. This should be a moment between Zack and Sephiroth. I wish there had been more background of these two characters together, because we see a DMW scene of Sephiroth trying to teach Zack how to take down an enemy in one strike. I wish we could have seen more interactions like that. They don't have to be best friends, but we could have gotten an interesting look at Sephiroth before his descent into madness. I feel the story may have worked better as being two distinct stories in one package instead of one narrative that kind of retcons the original source material and forces them to be together. What I mean is, dedicate the first 6 chapters, including the prologue, to how Zack became Soldier First Class, and in the first story with him gaining the Buster Sword and having to deal with his death of his mentor by his own hand. And that's what I thought was going to happen. Because then you can follow it up with how Sephiroth turned evil and Zack steps into his own as a hero. Speaking of heroes, to spare the sands, the seas, the skies, I offer thee this silent sacrifice. Loveless, Act 5. This is a story of honor and sacrifice. At the beginning of the game, Zack is chasing the fame of Sephiroth and the other first-class members. Because to Zack, this is what defines a hero according to the world around him, illustrated by the fan clubs you can join in Sector 8. This isn't to say he only cares about fame, but it's how he is conditioned to think that this is what it takes to be a hero. By the end, this is replaced by staying true to his honor and sacrificing himself for Cloud. Zack, with his silent sacrifice, loses his friends and family, his life, and Aerith. Of course I'll come back to you. Even if you don't promise to wait, I'll return knowing you'll be here. The last line of Loveless, the musical. Okay, I said I didn't care for Loveless prose, and I'm not arguing that it doesn't tie into the story, just it's a little bit too decorative for my liking. But there is some beautiful language, and the ideas being presented here are great. This line has something so striking, prophesizing Zack and Aerith as star-crossed lovers. Zack goes through hell and high water to get back to Aerith, who's finally given up writing to Zack. Albeit, doesn't quite give up with the sign that she wears pink every day. She still returns every day waiting, knowing that he can find her where the flowers grow. In the final confrontation, when the DMW takes a life of its own, Zack sees flashes of everyone who's made an impact on him in the story, till finally, the DMW rolls only one portrait, the flower girl, Aerith. He sees her in his mind before he sacrifices himself and returns to the live stream. Okay, I need a minute. Okay, back to some lighter stuff. I loved how they handled the cameos and the characters of the original FF7. A personal favorite was meeting the man who started Seventh Heaven. I know it's not really a cameo, but little tidbits like this make me happy. Of course, some characters are pre-set up to be in the story. Tifa, Cloud, and Aerith, of course, are already tied into Zack's story, but the inclusion of Zack's relationships with the Turks, especially Sung, you can see that while the CIA proxies do have dirty hands, there is a heart with them. Sung holding the letters for Zack that Aerith wrote, and wanting to try and save him is something that comes to mind. Sidebar. When Zack finds a camera outside Aerith's garden and doesn't know how to spell Sung's name, amazing. Just thought it was hilarious. Also, can we talk about Cissnei, who, while being an enjoyable character, comes up rather flat. It's like they want to make her a love interest for Zack, but you already have that connection that is present in his relationship with Aerith. I liked Cissnei when she was there, but she could be replaced with any other Turk in the scenes. It wouldn't really change the story at all. Comment below if you have a difference of opinion on that. That's just what I think. With the runtime of the story being on the shorter end, the game does a great job of pacing. I was worried that it'd move at a breakneck pace, but this isn't true. The main campaign is only around 10 hours, but it has moments of high intensity, but doesn't shy away from taking a moment to just breathe and enjoy the characters interacting. The main campaign is such a worthy prequel when it works more like a prequel than its own original story. The game relies on the fact that you have played the original Final Fantasy VII, and that's where it should have been focused more if they are going to be telling it as a prequel. All in all, I'm trying to say is, I didn't care for Genesis. That's the main point I'm getting at. Also, Kazushige Nojima is awesome as always. Not a whole lot to say here other than I very much enjoyed the soundtrack to this game. Price of Freedom, certified banger. A personal favorite is A Flower Blooming in the Slums, a riff on Aerith's theme. From the opening of the acoustic guitar, you can hear what is coming. Then the piano hits to apply the majestic melody that gently screams nostalgia. Wonderful. The abundance of guitar feels so right with Zack's story, and I don't just mean the moments with the electric guitar wailing in the action scenes. I love the heavy incorporation of acoustic guitars. There is a melancholy to the music, a foreshadow of the events of Zack's story. A sad cowboy locked within an action hero vibe. While having a few complaints about the story and the ease of gameplay, Crisis Core is an exciting, fast-paced thrill ride that provides context to an amazing character in Zack and his journey to become an honorable hero. It puts you in the seat as a badass as well as having these tender moments that give you the character so much humanity and paces the game masterfully. While the story is short, there's so much to explore on return visits. The game runs flawlessly and is gorgeous. It will keep you engaged long after the credits roll. And I give Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion 9 peach rings out of 10.
Yum.
I'm Truman DeCamp, and thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day.